thanks for coming. We're just getting a little bit of, well, we're three sessions into it. Everyone's always late 3 sessions into it, so I'm not even going to apologize. I'm super excited today because we've got Hussein and Farah here. I won't do too much of an introduction, but when I heard about the program that he has in the Twin Cities, I was so excited because it reaches to the topic of representing the digitally underrepresented in economic development. But he has a terrific program on getting kids involved using broadband. It's culturally aware to get people to learn, to get jobs, to have mentors. It's such a holistic approach that I think it's going to be helpful. And he's been doing it for a couple of years, and if you had the resources, you might be ready to take it on the road. So with that, I will say here's Hussein.
Thank you very much. Good morning, afternoon. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Hussein Farah. I am the founder and executive director of a non-profit organization called the New Vision Foundation. We are technically 3 years old right now. We were founded in 2016. Going to our third year. But before I go into the organization that we have, I'll tell you a little bit about myself and then give the whole narrative. I'm from Somalia and we like to tell stories, so if you don't mind, I'll share my story with you guys for a few minutes. I was born in Somalia, but like many of us, the civil war disrupted our lives. I moved from Somalia to Kenya when I was about 7 years old. My first few years of formal education was as a refugee kid. If you think about the cliche of a refugee kid under tree, no rights, all that good stuff. But along the way, I was fortunate to have people and organizations intervene in my life and allow me the education process to continue. And that process ultimately brought me to the United States in the summer of 1999 to do my master's in software engineering. Refugee program that brought me here as a graduate student. And so my entry point into the United States was in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I completed my master's in software engineering for about 2 years and started working as a software analyst, assistant analyst. And initially as a young man, I was enjoying myself in the DC metro. It's not there to love, everything is there. But gradually felt like a very small fish in a very big ocean. The guilt of being there just because of a flip of a coin could be somewhere else. Other people intervene in my life, and here I am just living large and not just caring about anything else. That gradually got to me, and so as I was thinking about that, as I was going through that process, in the spring of 2003, I read an article in the Washington Post about Somalis in Minnesota. And just like that, I was just talking to Kathy a few minutes ago. Just like that, I felt like this is where I need to be. This is my calling. I have to be in Minnesota. And I went to my boss. His name is Andre Alexander. I'll never forget the look on his face when I told him, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. I'm moving to Minnesota. And the guy looked at me and says, are you out of your mind? Do you know where Minnesota is? I said, no. Do you know anybody in Minnesota? I said, no. Do you have anything lined up in Minnesota? I said, no. And he's like, why would you do this? Why would you just disrupt your life and just move all the way? I told him, I came to the United States 4 years earlier with only $50 in my pocket. And this is 4 years later, I have significantly more than $50 now. And when I came 4 years earlier, I did not know a single person. Now I know people. I'm like, don't worry about me, I'll be fine. I drove 22 hours non-stop from Silver Spring, Maryland to St. Paul, Minnesota. And that's how I brought myself to Minnesota, the summer of 2003. And a few months later, I was a co-founder of an organization called the African Development Center, which is still there in the West Bank area of Minneapolis. And I did that for about 10 years, basically, building financial literacy classes, home ownership classes, first-time home buyer classes, business development, all the 9 years of ensuring financial success to new immigrants in the United States. In 2012, I took some time out because in my family, I was the only one who left Africa. Everybody else was in Africa. My dad was not feeling well. So I took myself out of my work at AEC. I became a consultant that allowed me to go back and forth. And when my dad passed away in 2015, I was in Nairobi in the summer of 2015. There was a program called the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. President Obama was opening up in Nairobi, Kenya, and I was one of the prime ministers at that time. And around that time, a 9-year-old blew himself up in the name of my religion. And my oldest son at that time was 9 years old. And I asked myself, there's nothing in my religion that says we should harm others. What does it take for an adult to brainwash the mind of this child, who looks like my son, to do such a thing? And then the more I thought about it, the more I looked at this kid, even in the context of sub-Saharan Africa, this kid was coming from abject poverty. And the family was vulnerable to that extreme level of being told, the West is against you, there's nothing for you in this life, think about the hereafter, think about the future, and here you are, do this as you think about that. And so when I came back to Minnesota, the summer of 2015, after the program, I thought about, in the eyes of my son, who's 9, my second born, who was 7, and my newly born daughter, and thinking about the context of Minnesota. Minnesota, you know, we are number 1, number 2 in so many metrics, the best place to live, the best quality of life, but we're either 50 out of 50 or 49 out of 50 when it comes to racial income divide. And so to think about this young generation growing up and having this extreme level of disparities in terms of societies, the mainstream white communities and communities of color, predominantly immigrant population, what is going to stop them from being vulnerable also, you know, to be told that this society is not for you, this community is not for you. But if you're to think about that, how then do you tackle that problem from a position of hope and tell them there's a pathway for you, you can do this if you're able to follow guidance, and not just the fear factor of just, you're going to be doing this X, Y, Z. And so that's the genesis of New Vision Foundation. I went back to my IT roots and said, if we can go to the middle schools and high schools, if we can teach these kids the basics of coding as a platform of IT, that's what excites them, app development, but the whole 9 years of IT generally. And if we can give them these tools so that by the time they graduate from high school, they have tangible skills, that they can go into this 21st century digital economy, that right now a 19-year-old can get hired because of 1 or 2 certifications and get paid $90,000 today. The marketplace allows for that. Then how can we have this immigrant population participate in that as well? So our very first class was in 2017, Southwest High School in Minneapolis. That was a proof of concept model, 1 school, 1 year. And by the end of that year, we had the very first session of that class was only 2 students that showed up. And at the end of that year, we had 32 students in that class. For a class size that was supposed to be 20. So we said yes up to a point, then we had to say no, because kids were sharing computers and stuff like that, the resources weren't enough. But then we took that success in that 1 school, that 1 year, to go to 5 schools the next year, 2018, we were in 5 schools in Minneapolis. Along the way, we became an official partner of Minneapolis Public Schools. And by the end of 2018, we also became an official partner, a community partner of St. Paul Public Schools. And now we're in 10 schools, both Minneapolis and St. Paul. A total of 950 students that are basically learning coding and gaming and robotics from middle school and high school. And so, if you think about this, is one of the schools in Minneapolis, Edison High School, part of Minneapolis Public Schools. We have 5 trainers right now. The trainers are all from the community themselves. So 100% of our kids, 100% of our students are students of color. The trainers reflect the students. It's a very deliberate process of saying, if I'm a software engineer, if I stand in front of the class, the students can see themselves through me. And they can see themselves through Hodon. Hodon is a graduate of the U with a computer science degree. And she now teaches coding in at least 4 of those schools. When she goes in front of the class, they can see themselves reflected in the training. That is a very deliberate process that we do. And if you think about it, this is 1 other school in St. Paul. Out of the 952 students that we have, 55% of that are girls, 45% are boys. It's just looks like girls are more inclined to go into tech. We love that. 3 out of the 5 trainers that we have are also female trainers, again reflecting the students that we have. And so we want them to think about this 21st century economy to be a pathway for them to uplift the communities. We are a hands-on organization. We are not saying that they must go through a 4-year degree with the university or a 2-year associate. We're saying all hands on deck. If there's a job out there that you can get at 19 years old and get $80,000, go for it. Because that company will then pay for your undergraduate degree along the way as they count you as part of the workforce. And so we are trying to be as practical as possible. This is a very fast girls-only coding class that we had at the Brian Coyle Best Buy Teen Tech Center. It's a very long one. Brian Coyle is a prominent community center in South Minneapolis, and Best Buy, one of the Fortune 500 companies, had a bunch of what they call Best Buy Teen Tech Centers all over the country. This is one of the Teen Tech Centers in South Minneapolis, and we had a pilot project of girls-only coding with the trainer being female as well, and it was tremendously successful. Again, giving them not just access to the broadband, but access to the technology itself, that they can utilize as they go into the workforce. What we quickly realized after going through our first year of classes was that things that most of us would take for granted. You come to class, you give the knowledge, give them assignment, they come back home, they go home, they come back the next day. You expect them to do the assignments on their computers at home. We quickly realized that was not the case. These kids were going home and there was nothing at home. And so they would come back the next day and look at you and say, I wish I could have done this homework or this assignment or this project, but I don't have a computer at home. I don't have any hardware at home to do that. So once we realized that, we quickly created a very strategic partnership with an organization called TechDump. TechDump is one of the largest IT recyclers in Minnesota, basically. They're based in the Twin Cities. And once the students show that they're serious about the classes and they have at least 90% attendance within the first couple of months, we give them a laptop. Each one of them will receive a laptop that we buy for them, and it's theirs to keep. It doesn't matter whether they finish the program that year, they drop out after 6 months, after they've earned it the first couple of months, it's theirs to keep. And we quickly realize how powerful that is, because all of a sudden they have a piece of asset that they call their own, and they feel proud about that, get more engaged in the process. They go above and beyond any type of assignment that we give them. Became very creative with that. And so we are excited about this partnership because we know that that is one barrier that we're eliminating for the students. Other than just giving them the technical skills, we are giving them this piece of equipment that they can call their own. And then the second element of a barrier that we had to eliminate was basically access to internet, which is the theme of this conference here, broadband access. You'll be surprised, in the Twin Cities, this is now where we say the big cities out there, that most of these communities don't have access to high-speed internet. And so even when we were giving them that laptop, the next question you ask them is, do you have high-speed internet at home? And the answer will be no, we don't have it. And so we then had to create a very strategic partnership with Comcast, whereby all our students right now are eligible to receive high-speed internet at $9.95 per month. This is an equivalent of $60 to $70 a month program through Comcast. But we are not. Some organizations will do this as a way of creating revenue for themselves, so they buy the access from Comcast and then resell it to families. We don't do that. It's a direct link from Comcast to our community. We just facilitate that sign up. And so quickly, that became the third barrier that we eliminated on behalf of our students. We're giving them the knowledge, we're giving them the equipment, and now we're giving them access to high-speed internet. And so we're not only empowering this kid by going through, by having that access, but you're also uplifting the whole family. The dad can now go online, the mom can now go online, the siblings can now go online, and it's when you think about rural broadband access, this is inner city Minneapolis, inner city St. Paul, specific neighborhoods of communities that don't have that. And now all of a sudden we are enriching their lives. And so we're very proud about the programming that we have so far. One key element of programming is an internship program that we facilitated with some of our partners. Our very first cohort was in 2018, where we had a bunch of 11th graders and 12th graders in our classes do paid IT internships in the summer of 2018. This past year, we had about 35 students participate, so it's 100% growth rate, where we specifically go to individual businesses, individual companies like 3M and Best Buy and say, we want these kids to come to your IT department. We want them to be in that corporate setting at a much younger age, so that by the time they graduate from high school, they have that vision. I used to work, not just work and get a paycheck, but work in corporate Minnesota, corporate United States. And we believe that that is a very powerful way of making themselves imagine that they're part of this economy, part of this 21st century digital economy, that they can work any professional setting that they want. So we're very deliberate about creating these partnerships with businesses. It is not just Fortune 500 companies. We do have smaller organizations that will take one or two of our students, and we are here basically to say we are ready to come to Greater Minnesota. You know, we are receiving calls from school districts as diverse as Wilma School District, Public Schools, St. Paul Public Schools, Marshall Public School, saying we would like you to come do the coding classes with our students. Because the reality is, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, so the population of students of color in these communities was very small. But now you're looking at anywhere between 20 to 30 to 40% being students of color. And so if we have to be very deliberate about making sure that they're not just going through the motions of going through middle school and higher school and exiting without being ready to really participate in this 21st century economy. And so we are ready to expand our program. We're looking for the resources. The template is there. We have perfected this as good as it comes. You know, hopefully by the end of this year we'll be in 4 other schools in the Twin Cities Metro because the school year has just started. And we were 9 before the school year started. The last couple of weeks we had 1 school come live. We're now 10. In the next 2 to 3 weeks we'll have at least 4 other schools come live. What that means is, as an organization, we look for resources to hire full-time trainers that can then do either full-day programming in those schools or after-school programming in those schools. And not just the training part of it, but also the internship part of it, the community engagement part of it, that we are saying basically this is a pathway programming. This is not just a one-off IT training program. We're creating these pathways so that when they're going through this process, they see themselves as being part of the whole economy. And it's an ecosystem that we're connecting the dots and not just giving them specific IT skills. As you can see, some of our key educational partners, you know, we are community partner of both Minneapolis and St. Paul Public Schools, the 2 largest school districts. We have a partnership now with St. Thomas University in St. Paul. Basically, as we see the tremendous need to grow our programming, we need to train more trainers. And so we have a graduate software engineering programming at St. Thomas University. Allow us to have some of their students teach some of our curriculum for individuals that want to be trainers in our program. So train the trainer modules and be able to expand this. And so if there's a need right now, for example, we need 5 trainers tomorrow, then we do have the trainers ready in very specific coding languages, whether it's HTML5, JavaScript, CSS, and not just coding, but also cybersecurity database as we think about the whole 9 years of our team. So that those classes, the partnership was formulated this summer. We are now starting this process as well. One thing that I should also say, we are moving into a much larger facility in St. Paul. We were based in Minneapolis the last 3 years. But as of this past summer, there was a program through the city of St. Paul, the new vision was approved for, to build out almost a 4,000 square foot space with in-house computer labs, conference room, training centers, because one of the very specific requests that we're getting from parents is a parent will come to us and say, I want my child to learn coding. You don't teach coding in his or her school. Can I bring him or her to you? And so the last 3 years we could not do that. We were in school programming. But beginning, I think we just signed the lease October 1st, so we're now in the construction period. By the end of this year, we will have those training facilities ready now, and whereby we will continue our programming to push in schools, but we will also have daily coding classes that parents can then come. If some days will be for middle schools, some days will be for high schools. And then we will also have young adults, 16 to 28, that can be part of this workforce right now, where employers are coming to us and saying, yes, we would like to help you with the future workforce, but we have needs right now. Can you help us find talent right now? And so we are now creating a pilot program whereby by training these young adults, 16 to 28, in very specific entry-level IT jobs, then employers can just come and pick them up with a 3 to 6 months probation period, and then take them through this workforce that we have. A couple of things that to show you how we are very much part of the ecosystem here in Minnesota. We are a member of Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. We look ourselves as an ally of employers. There is a major talent crisis in Minnesota, specifically a major diverse talent crisis in Minnesota. We are creating a pipeline for that. We're creating a future workforce for that, and we want to present ourselves to as many employers as possible. As we give these kids the knowledge, we want them to be also simultaneously be lined up with employers in the state. So there was a discussion that we were part of just a couple of months back. How do we disrupt the existing systems, and how do we find hidden talents within Minnesota, within the communities that we are in? So for example, even in greater Minnesota, if you go to Wilmot, if you go to St. Cloud, if you go to Marshall, there is a very high percentage of unemployment within the youth of communities of color. And to me, that is just talent that is, right there in front of us, not being utilized. And we need to do more about that. And if you think about the reason why there was a large immigrant population in cities like Marshall, Mankato, St. Cloud, Wilmot, was because of this factories, this assembly lines that was in need of the labor 10, 15 years ago. But most of these companies right now, most of these organizations right now are automating their processes. And so an assembly line that used to have 20 people now has only 5 people. 15 jobs have been eliminated because of automation. I am not going to be mad at the company because they're looking at the bottom line. That's the reality of the marketplace, right? If you can be efficient, if you can have more money out of that, that's good for you. But what happens to those communities? Those 15 jobs that were eliminated in that assembly line, do you think that those members of those communities will find other jobs in Wilmot, or other jobs in St. Cloud, or other jobs in Marshall? And the answer is probably no. And so what's going to happen? There's going to be, again, mass migration out of the greater Minnesota cities. And so in the long run, it's going to hurt all of us. In the long run, if we don't think about this strategically, it's going to affect all of us, and we're all going to lose. So we need to be proactive. My sense is we need to be proactive in terms of educating and training the future workforce. We need to give them these technical skills as much as possible. We need to make themselves see themselves to be part of this economy. And so when these jobs change, and the jobs will change, and the technology will change, they're also adapting as well. They're also adapting to that change, and they're not being left behind. One of the examples I always give is that if you think about the ride-sharing companies, Uber and Lyft, if you go to the cities right now, the people that drive Ubers and Lyft are most likely people that look like me. But what is Uber and Lyft doing? Uber and Lyft is spending billions of dollars to have driverless cars, technology that will effectively get rid of those drivers. And so when those drivers no longer drive for Ubers and Lyft, where are they going to go? And you cannot be mad at Uber and Lyft for wanting to enhance the bottom line. But as a society, we have to be proactive and say, if we don't do very deliberate ways of making sure these communities don't get left behind, then if we think that the disparities are bad now, think about 5 years from now. It's going to be much worse. And that's the message that we have. That's the passion that I bring. And again, from the lenses of being a parent now who has kids in Minnesota, and wanting to make sure that Minnesota belongs to all of us, and not just a few of us. And so at the local level, we are very much engaged in this process. That's why we're here, to make sure that we tell our stories, to make sure that we are part of the ecosystem. We don't see ourselves as a Twin Cities only organization. We see ourselves as a Minnesota organization. So it's in our DNA right now to find those resources, to go to the cities that has our communities on there, as many of them as possible. At a national level, we are also participating to look at how do we basically embrace what we call opportunity youth. I was in Philadelphia this past spring through the Aspen Youth Forum. Again, very deliberate, very specific way of saying we have problems. We have to be thinking about this problem from an ecosystem perspective and not just connecting one or two dots. We are all part of this ecosystem, whether you're in the cities, whether in greater Minnesota, whether it's a national thing. There are specific ways of building effective pathways, using data to guide us. How can we use data to guide us so that we don't just go blind, we're delivering how we do it. How do we leverage funding for innovation, finding those right partners out there, looking for ways of leveraging all that, and basically finding those supportive policies. So at the end of the day, it's also about policies that we have to implement at a state level, at a federal level, at a county level, city level. How do we become part of the discussion? And so we are, as much as possible, trying to look at that whole perspective as well. And in conclusion, this is a chart that was there just a few months back. A national report that says Minnesota is the second worst state in the country when it comes to racial inequalities. If you think about it, that also means Minnesota is the best state for one very specific demographic. We are, in terms of Fortune 500 companies per capita, Minnesota is #1 in the country. If you think about 19 Fortune 500 companies within the state of Minnesota. If you think about philanthropy dollars, Minnesota is ranked #3, only after New York and California, #3 in terms of actual philanthropy dollars going out. And if you look at per capita, we are #1, hands down, because of the population that we have and the dollars that go out, we're #1. But this problem keeps getting worse. So that means we are not really effectively going after those pockets, and we're not using data to actually know how to tackle it. The money is flowing out, but the problem is getting worse. How do we find ways of closing this racial income inequality? This is one single bullet that we're trying to use in New Vision by saying, if we can take a few steps back, go to these kids when they're still in middle school, high school, excite them about going to tech, have them go into tech immediately after they go out of high school. Maybe 5 years or 10 years from now, we'll have more of us participate in the high tech space, and maybe we'll make a dent. We'll have more of us going to these high-paying jobs, and not just think about minimum wage as a workforce to run the strategy. But there is a lot of other things that we can do. The broader mission and vision of New Vision Foundation is actually to be able to say, instead of being the last or the second last in the country, let's aim to be the best in the country. And show them that we can do this. We can effectively reach out to communities that are underrepresented right now, and not just talk to them about $15 minimum wage. My frustration with elected officials, I tell them, I've had my fights with the mayor of Minneapolis, I've had my fights with the mayor of St. Paul, is that the only thing that they talk about is $15 minimum wage. And I asked them, I said, do you have any idea the damage that you're causing to our kids? If they're growing up and all they hear is $15 an hour, when they get out of high school and they go to McDonald's and get $15 an hour, they think that they're the man. They think that this is it. And the reality is, in this marketplace that we're in right now, it's not going to take them anywhere. And so I am not against that. I am against you talking only about that. And we need to have a much broader sense of saying, we want to actually shift the mindset. Our vision right now, and my passion right now, is to shift the mindset of saying, instead of just being consumers of we should be thinking about being the creators of technology. And if we can be successful in shifting that mindset, then we'll have more engineers out of us, we'll have more scientists out of us, we'll have more Bill Gates out of us, or we'll have kids that are aspiring to be the next Bill Gates and the next Steve Jobs. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we need to tell them that they can do that, and we need to tell them that aspire high, think big, and not just think about 15 minutes. And that is we're very deliberate about saying that. So if you look at some of these statistics, they're really depressing. I'm not even going to say them out loud because they're going to make this room feel depressed. That's not the aim for that. It's just more of an awareness. We do have very specific problems. We do have very big problems within pockets of Minnesota, and we need to be thinking about that. We need to be saying, how can we make Minnesota be the best state for everybody, and not just the best state for some of us. And if we go back to the example, my biggest fear of this kid basically being susceptible to being told that you don't belong. We don't want kids growing up in our state thinking that they don't belong. We want them to think that they can aspire to do anything that they want. They can be whatever they want. And some of them will work out, some of them will not work out, but the sky should be the limit. And that's exactly what we think about. If you think about a staggering 57% of Somali children under the age of 18 living poverty in Minnesota, how is that possible? How is that possible in this 21st century, now going to the 22nd century, that we should be thinking about? We had a couple of videos to play here. You just see the audio now because no, you just see the video. The audio is not working. But just to give you a perspective, we had some of our students record 1 or 2 minute perspective of what excites them about the coding classes. This particular young girl wants to be a software engineer when she grows up. She's excited about the class. She's passionate about the class. And she has never missed one class in the close to 2 years that she's been participating. And this young man, if you see this video, he actually will make this room laugh if you had the audio, because he mentions all the professions that you will think about. He wants to be a doctor, an engineer, a pharmacist, neuroscientist, and all these things, just because his mind is very active. And that's exactly what we want. We want them, as we give them these skills, critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills. I am biased for them to go to tech because I used to be in tech, but I'm not saying that's the only thing you can do. You can be anything you want, but just think about it in a more systematic way. If you think about coding as a language, if I show you a page of what coding looks like, many numbers, many digits, block after block. So when you're giving them the skills, you're actually building the critical thinking capacity, problem-solving capacity. They have to do this before they do this. They have to do this before they do this. And that allows us to say, if you go to tech, that's good for us. If you don't go to tech, if you want to be a lawyer, that's good for you as well. If you want to be an engineer, that's good for you. If you want to be a doctor, that's good for you. But get these skills and don't let anybody tell you that you cannot be that person. That's about it. Thank you very much for listening. I can now answer all your questions.
So first of all, thank you very much for your work on behalf of all of our kids, and it's a great thing. It's a great thing. And I know of the work of the African Development Center, not so much of this new foundation, the New Vision Foundation. So this is great to learn more. And I'm going to be really honest. I don't see this organization as being a statewide organization, because there's a lot of impact to kids that are in the metro area, but not so much to those kids, whether they're children of color or kids of Caucasian persuasion, that are also subject to radical persuasions and feel like they don't belong. And so I'm wondering about a model and how we take this amazing idea and help leverage that into rural areas, like what PCs for Peoples did when they started in the cities, and now they train trainers in rural parts of the state to deliver the same kind of program. Has there ever been any conversation amongst your impressive website, so I had a chance to look at the board and your advisory group and your staff, but has there been any conversation amongst your leadership or team members on figuring out how to really be in rural, where we can create those urban-rural connections and reduce that number of discrimination and conflict amongst our community members, which we're known for nationally as not being very good at that. Can we change that by creating programs like yours in rural? Have you had discussions like that?
So to answer your question, yes, we've had discussions about that, and we're very deliberate about making sure we make that happen. But I'll take one step back. We are not going to reinvent the wheel in terms of what PC for People is doing or what other organizations are doing. We are very specific about wanting to go into pockets of communities in rural Minnesota that has a large population of immigrant communities. Because the need is there. I don't think anybody will come and dispute that the need is not there. The need is there. And so, again, I'll use the same analogy that was used earlier here. If you want to help anybody, put on the gas mask fast and help yourself fast. If we really want to close this racial income divide, if you really want to make sure that Minnesota belongs to everybody, we're going to go into those communities right now that are being left behind. And all the data will show you and show everybody that the communities that are being left behind are now communities of color. And so the answer to your question is yes, we are coming to Greater Minnesota. But we are going to be very deliberate about going to pockets of Greater Minnesota that has a large immigrant population.
Thank you.
Can you say more about the credit, working on the credit piece with the public schools? Would the course then be entered in Minnesota Common
Yes,
Core?
yes. So we, the process of having our courses accredited in the public schools takes about 5 years. I don't know, it's like a dinosaur that moves like a stone. We are now 3 years into those 5 years. And so we're getting closer to that. We've gone back and forth, making sure all the curriculum that we have aligns to specifically what MDE wants and how the school districts can use that. And so to answer your question, yes, we are working towards that. We have greater flexibility when it comes to public charter schools, because they have their own autonomy, and that's why with the public charter schools, we actually have full-day programming in those schools. With the public district schools, it's mostly an after-school program because we haven't been able to get that in, but we're working towards that. And as we go into any Greater Minnesota schools, school districts, that's exactly the message that we give them. We might not have the credits right away, but we are working towards making sure these kids do have credits. That's from the high school level, but on the college level, we are also engaging MCTC, St. Paul Tech, Oakville College to see how they will take this credit once our students graduate. It's a process, and the discussion already takes.
Thank you.
It might be too much of a tangent, but I'm very passionate right now about the possibility of transforming our education system at the high school level in particular, but also junior high. Freakonomics just had a fantastic episode on our math education and how it was designed for our desperate need to be able to compete against the Soviets and be able to send people to the moon. And you got to be have people that are able to do these mathematical calculations, as it's not like you're ever going to be carrying a calculator in your pocket. So our system hasn't changed since then. The kind of classes that you're talking about, I think, should be part of the fundamental high school curriculum. And I would love to see Blandin partner with putting some leverage on the state to transform some of that and adapt our education to that to the current needs, which would only help your efforts.
Exactly. I mean, I will say this: it's very frustrating to be in the year 2020 and to have one of the largest school districts in the state not have coding as part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
What do we do? It's 2020. This is everything to do with technology. And they will tell you, look, we have other fires to put off. We cannot be thinking about extra stuff while we are basically dying to just solve the basic math and science and English and E&L stuff. It's a sad answer, but it's the reality out there. And that's why we feel like Minneapolis Public Schools was very quick to acknowledge that this is a need that they're not fulfilling right now, and as a partner we should be doing this. But yes, we should be doing much more than that. Yes.
I feel like you are ahead of so many major disruptions. I mean, you know, in a way that's going to be amazing, and I'm so glad you're there. I mean, you talk about the big data giving us better solutions. We can talk about education. I have 3 kids. One went to a charter, one went to a public, one went to a private. The charter, in our experience, is but I mean, we're trying to find what's going to work for the future. I mean, I think that the racial gap in Minnesota, you know, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. And I'm so glad that somebody is working on making all of that happen. And then enter automation. The impact of automation on economic development. So I'm glad you're ready to hit the streets and be, you know, and thank you. Thank you for your work and thank you for being first and thank you all for
Very inspiring.